Hello, Bill Conrad here for Computer Science 156. This is the third in a series of videos on this project where we are creating the back end of a Spring Boot application that does CRUD operations on a database table. We're creating endpoints for a Restful API, and we'll talk about what that means, that allows the front end of a web application to communicate with the back end to do database operations that create, read, update, and destroy rows in a database table. So far, we've set up a deployment on Doku for our app, and configured it with a database and with Google OAuth. We also set up the database table. So we have an entity class that represents one row in the database, a repository class that represents the entire database table, and a database migration file that instructs the app how to create the database table if it does not already exist. We specified that in JSON. The JSON commands are converted to SQL, SQL being the language that the database understands. And we are now ready to create our controller. The controller in a Spring Boot app is the thing that maps a URL to the code that is executed when when a request comes into that URL from the web. So we're about to do that. This is the issue that we're working on. It's in the in progress column. We already created, did we? Did we already create a branch? I think we did. Git status. Indeed, we did. PC create commit controller is our branch, and we're ready to fire up VS Code. So we're going to go to, let's close up GitHub workflows. We don't need that right now. The front end directory is closed up, but we do need under source main. We can close up entities and repositories for now and resources, but we are going to need to open up controllers. And we've been using UCSB dates as the model that we're following. And we're instead creating a controller for the database table called commits. So we're going to make a copy of this file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by actually, you know what? Instead, I'm not going to create a copy of this file. I'm going to undo that. And let's instead create an empty file under controllers. So I'm going to go under controllers, hit this little button right here, which makes a new file. I'm going to call it commits controller.java. So we now have an empty class that is in the right package. So let's do this like a little bit at a time so that we can talk through what all of the code is doing. We're likely going to need all of these imports. So I'm going to go ahead and take all of these imports. Imports in Java basically allow us to refer to these classes without having to specify their full package name of the class. So unlike in C++ where you have to do the pound include or you can't even refer to the names at all, in Java, imports are always optional, but they make life a lot easier because you don't, otherwise every time we refer to a date time format, we would have to specify this huge long name, and that's super inconvenient. These imports are all highlighted in yellow in VS Code right now because they are all currently unused. When we're done, if any of these are still unused, we'll remove them because they're not necessary, but we'll probably need them all by the time we're finished. All right, so what goes in this commits controller? Well, let's look at our dates controller. First of all, we see there is a javadoc comment, so we'll copy that over. And actually, let's do this as a side-by-side thing. That will probably make a lot more sense. Put this down at the bottom of the screen, and let's, that is not what I wanted. Is that what I wanted? That's also not what I wanted. I wanted to split my screen. That's what I wanted. There we go. All right. So now we have on the left, we have our dates controller. And on the right, I want the commits controller. Okay, so we're going to copy this javadoc comment over. Java.comments actually will show up in the automatically generated documentation. We can look at that another time, but right now I'm just going to say this is a REST controller for commits. And now these annotations here, we're going to need all of these. The tag name equals commits. This is the tag that will show up on Swagger, which, as you may remember, is the tool that we use to test these API endpoints. Request mapping API commits, that's going to put this prefix in front of all the URLs in my controller so that I don't have to specify it over and over again, and so that I don't make copy-paste mistakes. You would just specify this in one place. It's part of the don't repeat yourself idea. REST controller means that this is going to be a controller that that is for REST operations, representative state transfer, which is the model that most web applications use for communicating between the front end and the back end. SLF for J is simple logging framework for Java, and it will allow me to put logging statements, debugging output in my code. So we'll see that later on if it becomes important. One thing that people often forget to do, all of these classes need to extend API controller, extends API controller. Now that is not a Spring Boot thing. That is the thing with our local code base. We have this class API controller where we have put in some things like get current user allows us to get the identity of the current user. And we also have these methods here, generic message and a exception handler that allow us to take a lot of the error message handling and put it in just one place, again, so that we don't have to repeat ourselves many times throughout the code. But in order to get those benefits, you do need to extend in our commits controller, extends API controller. Now, auto-wired. I want to mention this is a thing that when we first started working with Spring Boot, the Spring Boot framework, this was the recommended way to do this thing called dependency injection. It is no longer the preferred way. So the thinking in the Spring community has changed. They now prefer something called constructor injection. And over time, we will probably migrate our code base from the old auto-wired to the new constructor injection. But for now, this is still how our code base is set. And what this basically says is, remember we talked before about how the date repository, now in our case, it's going to be the commit repository. So let's fix that. Commit repository. And notice that the class starts with a capital letter. The instance variable starts with a lowercase letter. Java doesn't require that, but boy, oh boy, it makes your life so much easier and the life of all the other programmers easier if you follow that convention, because then no one has any doubt what a name is referring to. Capital letter is a class, lowercase letter is a variable. Notice this is red. In VS Code, if I click the quick fix, import commit repository, why, yes, indeed. Yes, I would like to do that. So that makes that easier. Now, back to this auto-wired thing. What does this mean? Well, you know that, to create an object in Java, if I wanted to create an object, I might say something like commit repository equals new commit repository, and it would invoke the constructor, and then I would have a new instance of this object. AutoWired does that for me, but it also has some extra magic. In this case, commit repository is in fact not, let's see if I find it here, it's under repositories. It's not a class, it's an interface. And it has this at repository annotation on it. Spring Boot will automatically construct a class that has all of the methods of this interface and does the proper database operations. And then when I say auto-wired, it will find an instance of that class that it has constructed and make this variable refer to that instance. So, but there's a bit more magic. The idea is that I can use this commit repository can be either a real honest to goodness commit repository, or it can be a fake commit repository that I use for testing. So it can be a real database or a fake database used for testing. That part will become more clear when we get to how we write unit tests for one of these controllers. So keep that in mind for now, but that's what's going on here. All right, the next thing I see is list all UCSB dates. And that is the first method I want to copy over. This, instead of listing all UCSB dates, it's going to list all commits. And it's going to return an iterable of commits. We see that the return type is iterable, not UCSB date, but commit. And commit is not defined, but quick fix. Import commit from the entities, absolutely. Yes, let's do that. So this is the all endpoint. Anybody that has the role user, meaning that you're logged in, and instead of list all UCSB dates, this should be list all commits. It's an iterable commit. And let's call the variable name commits. And we're not going to go from the UCSB date repository, but from the commit repository. And what we're going to do is we're going to call the find all method, which is going to return all the commits in the database. And then it's just going to return them. And that's how it works. So that is pretty simple. The next thing we're going to do, now this get a single date by ID is actually not until the next issue. So we're going to skip down to this one, create a new date. This is the kind of the first two basic methods. We need a method to get everything, and we need a method to be able to create something. So create a new commit. Now that I've copied that over, we're pretty much done with this file for now. So I'm going to close out of this window. Actually, I can just say close all, and now we have just this one. And I'll say close others. So we have just this window. Create a new commit. And we need the parameters to be the parameters that you need to create a new commit. So I'm going to bring up, actually, I'm going to split my screen again and bring up the commit entity, because we need these parameters here to match these. So param, I'm going to have a param message, and this is going to be the this is going to be the commit message at param URL, the commit URL. Now you may wonder, what is this? This isn't a comment, so what is it even doing? This is going to set up the Javadoc documentation. And I'll show you that at a later stage here, but for right now, let's just put in at param author login. This is going to be the GitHub login ID of the user that created the commit. Actually, authored is really the more that authored the commit is the more proper way to say that. And then param commit time, the time stamp on the commit with time zone information. Now we'll get rid of that, and then it will return not the saved UCSB date, but the saved commit. All right, operation summary, create a new commit. You need to be an admin to be able to do that. It is a post mapping, and this is going to be post commit. Let's make sure up here, did we change? No, we didn't. All UCSB dates. This should be all commits. It would still work if I didn't change that method name, but that would be sloppy. And we don't want to be sloppy. We want to, do things well. I don't think we need this anymore since we now have it here. So I'm going to close this window. And now parameter name equals message. And this is going to be a request param, a string, and it's going to be message. This is going to be URL, and this will be URL. This will be, let's keep that because that formatting is going to be helpful for us. This is going to be the author login, and this is going to be author login. This is going to be the commit time in ISO format. And it's going to be like this, except there will be a Z at the end of it, which indicates the time zone. And then that is going to be request param is going to be commit time and date time format. And then instead of local date time, this is going to be zoned date time. And this will be commit time. I think we got that right. Yes, a zone date time, we need to import that. So we'll import that from Java time. And this all looks reasonable. Throws JSON processing exception is necessary because we are going to be converting between Java objects and JSON. And there's always the possibility that there will be some issue that arises there. Now, let's see. Here's our log.info. You may have been wondering, what's this SLF for J for? This is what it's for. And instead of local date time, let's change this to commit time. And we'll see that when we run this, we will see this on the output log as debugging output. So now what do we want to do? We want to change this to say commit equals new commit. And then we will do commit.set. And we want to set each of these values. So we're going to set message to message. We're going to commit.set URL to URL. Commit.set author login to author login. And commit.set commit time to commit time. There we go. Get rid of all of that. Now, when we save it to the database, so we're going to save this commit to the database in the commit repository, and that will return us a commit. The reason we get back a different object, so this is the saved commit, is because this object will have the ID set. Remember that the ID field automatically increments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as we create each record in the database. And we want to see the ID of that. Now let's see why. Yes, it's wavy because the types don't match. We need to change this to commit, and now the types match. All right, so this is the code. At this point, we need is a endpoint for listing all the commits and an endpoint that allows us to create the commits. We are now ready to test this using Swagger. So let us fire up our application here, Maven Spring Boot Run. And over here, our front end is running already. So let's try logging in at localhost 8080. Log in. We're going to go to Swagger. And here is commits. Now, just to be clear, let's compare the code for a minute. This operation summary, create a new commit. This text comes from that summary right there. List all commits. That text comes from, where is it? This summary right here. And if I click on post, these names, message URL, author login, and commit time in, blah, 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 these all come from this. And by the way, I believe that this name here is wrong. I think here we need to take this in ISO format, blah, 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 out of here. I think the name should just be commit time. And if we want the if we want some information here to help people know what to type, I think there's a different way of doing it. I'm not going to worry about that right now, but I think that if we keep this right here like this, there's going to be a problem because I think it's going to want that to be the name of the parameter. So let's do this a second time. And let's refresh this page. And now you see commits. Okay, and if I do the post, you can see now I just have string, 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 and string date time. So let's put in message PC changed some code, URL, and I'm just going to example. Actually, this would really be something like github.com. It would be the URL for a commit. We can, let's just go to our repo. Any old repo will do. Here's a repo, and just go to commits and click on a specific commit. Now there's what the URL for a commit would actually look like. It's always good when you're testing to use realistic values rather than just, garbage values. So there's a real URL. Author login might be pconrad, and the commit time might be 2024 1031 T, and then let's say 150800Z. Now that is actually not correct. That's not the time right now because Z time is the time in Greenwich, England, and London. That's the prime meridian. Little legacy of British colonialism, but I digress. Let's hit execute and see what we get. And it worked. We got back a record in the database, and you can see there's what's in the database. And if I now go to get and do API commits all and execute, you can see that there is the square brackets mean an array, and there's a single object, and there's my commit. So this is working. Creating is working, and reading all is working. And the next thing to do would be to test it on Doku. Well, sure. Let's actually go ahead and do that just to show that. So we're going to test it on Doku. Of course, we have to do a commit. So I'll do get add dot get status get commit minus mpc create commits controller. And let me show you that you can actually make a multiple line commit message if you hit return, and then the convention is to hit one blank line, then you can add more detail. We added an API commits all and API commits post endpoint for reading all commits and creating a single commit. There we go. Oh, and then to end this, I need the single quote. Now, I've got an extra double quote in my commit message. Kind of don't like that. So there's the thing you can do called git commit minus minus amend, where you can go in, and this throws you into the Vim text editor. So if you don't like that, you can configure it to use a different editor instead. But I just edited my commit. You need to do that before you push to GitHub, unless otherwise you have to do a force push and it gets weird. But because I caught it before I committed, before I pushed, it was easy to fix. So now I can do get push origin and then the name of this branch. I'll do -u in case we need to do another push to this branch. And because it's my first push to this branch, it put up this very nice create a pull request. And I can just copy that URL, open it up, and I'm right where I want to be to create my pull request. We'll start with closes number, and then I want, let's see, what I'm looking for here is 52. So if I come back and say closes number 52, and you can see it's create commit controller, add get, add post. That's what I want. PC, create commit controller, add get all and post methods. In this PR, we add a get all for commits and a post to create a commit. And I like to go into Swagger and make a screenshot of what I just added. And sometimes I'll just do it like this rather than opening the whole thing. But that's just a little more compact. But I'll go back over here. Where am I creating the pull request? Right here. Paste that in. I can preview it to see what it will look like. Go back to the code and do draft pull request. Now, for some reason, this is creating draft pull requests, but I think honestly, this one's pretty much ready for review. Let's look at it ourselves and see if we see anything that we don't like. Here's our commits controller, and we have just those two methods in it. Oh, right. You know what? This is not going to be ready for review. It's going to fail some checks because we didn't write any tests. So we've got to deal with that. Over here, at least one of these is going to fail because we don't have any test coverage for this code. I am going to change this back up here, still in progress, convert to draft, because I know it's really not ready for review because it's going to fail some tests. So I don't want to ask people to review a code, a pull request that has failed tests, and I know that some are going to fail. But in the meantime, now that we have pushed that, we can go over to Doku and we can do a get sync. And I have one here recently. It's just going to be a different branch. So the latest branch, what is this branch called? Get status. It is PC create commit controller. So let's go over here. We'll do the get sync. We'll do the Doku PS rebuild. team01 dev pconrad1. And let that cook for a minute. While that's cooking, let's look at this this pull request. And as I predicted, we see that we've got some failures here. And what are the failures? Well, Jacoco, first of all, failed. And if we have the page here set up properly, that pull request will be here on the page. Here's create commit controller. And hopefully if I go to Jacoco for PR57, it's not here yet. It sometimes takes a minute for it to actually show up on the page. So we'll give that a moment. If I come back over here, backend Jacoco, if I look at details, so this failed, but it should still publish to the website. Let's see if I go on down. Oh, interesting. It says that it's not deploying to the website. That is actually a problem. Now we should probably try to fix that because it's really useful to have this up on the website when this fails so you can look at it. But the other thing I can do is I can come over here and I can just do Maven test Jacoco report, and we will see the test failures over here, the test coverage gaps over here. In the meantime, this is deploying on Doku. So in a moment, hopefully it will work on Doku as well as on localhost. And then back here, I just did the Maven test Jacoco report. If I do open target site Jacoco index, so open target site Jacoco index, I can see that, yep, I have 0 test coverage for my commits controller. The entire thing is red, all of it from top to bottom. Well, that's not surprising. I didn't write any tests yet. So let's go back to VS Code and let's look under, we have source main Java, but we also have source main tests. And under source main test Java controllers, we have been working with the dates as our example. So I'm going to make a new, under controllers, I'm going to make a new file that's going to be commits controller tests.java. And just like before, I'm going to split my screen in half, and I'll have the commits controller test over here. And over here, I will look at UCSB dates controller tests. And I'll start by including all the imports. We may or may not use all of these in the end, but we'll probably use quite a few of them, and we'll delete the ones we don't need. And then down here, these 2 lines. This is one of the mistakes people often make. They forget to change this. This is a web MVC test for a specific controller. We have to say the name of the controller specifically. Commits controller. Because what this is going to do is set up a test environment for that specific controller. Test config is a class that lives over here, and it configures some of the things that our controllers need in order to work properly. We don't need to go into that right now. Suffice to say, you need this import test config for this to work properly. Now, here is where we talked before about AutoWire and mocks. Part of the reason we use AutoWire for our repositories is that they allow us to create mocks, which are fake versions of the database table that we use for testing. And that will become more clear as we write the tests. Instead of a UCSB date repository, we need a commit repository. Commit repository. And this one, we need an import for it. Quick fix. And we've got the import we need. User repository, we're going to keep that because that has to do with the users in the application. We need that. So now we have a bunch of tests. And we are going to start. At the moment, we have our all method and we have our post method. So the tests that pertain to the all method are the ones that we want to copy over. So we're going to copy over these 2 tests first. And then we need to update those tests so that they are for the commits rather than UCSB dates. But let's keep going for the moment. Here is a test for post. We're going to want that test as well. So let's copy that test over. And we'll talk through in a minute what all of these are actually testing. Here's another test for post. And as we update these, we'll talk through what they do. This test, what we're doing is we're looking here in the mock MVC perform to see what endpoint is being tested. This endpoint is one that is in our next issue. It's where we're getting a particular database record by its ID. We don't need that test yet. We don't need this test yet. What is this one doing? Get all. That sounds like a test we're probably going to want to have. And indeed it is. Here's a all. So with this test we want, because it matches the URL that we implemented in this issue in the controller. This one, what is it looking for? Post. So that is a test for our post. We're going to need this test. So we'll copy over this test, paste it in. How about this one? What is this one doing? This one is looking up something by its ID. And also the verb here is delete. There are these different verbs, get, post, put, and delete. These are also called HTTP methods. And they are the different, if you look in Swagger, let me go back to Swagger for a moment. The different colors here correspond to these different verbs, the different HTTP methods. We so far have only implemented post on this endpoint and get on this endpoint. So that's what we're looking for in the tests. All the tests that pertain to post on /posts and get on /all. Everything else we're going to leave out. So this is actually delete. We don't want that one. This one is a put. We don't want that one. That's a put. We don't want that one. And we're done. So we have copied over the tests we need. I'm going to close up these files. Now let's walk through this. Let's see. On this one, instead of UCSB dates, we're going to want commits. And in fact, we can probably take this API UCSB dates and just do a search and replace on API commits and the whole file, and that's going to help. Now I see that this mock MVC cannot be resolved. I am wondering if we somehow failed to get the import for that. Quick fix. No. Let's leave that. Let's leave that alone. I think something else is going on there, and that may in fact be a red herring. So let's not worry about that for right now. Let's just look through here. Logged out users cannot get all. So what this is saying is when we're not logged in, which is the normal default state, and you try to do a get here, I should get a 403, which means that you're not permitted to do that operation. If I'm logged in as a user and I try to do a get all, I should get a 200 because I should be permitted to do that operation. If I'm trying to post and I'm logged out, I should get a 403, which means nope, forbidden. If I'm logged in as a regular user and I try to do a post, I should get a 403 because only admins can post. How is that true? Well, it's right here. This pre-authorize is you have to have role admin in order to do this operation. Here you have to have role user, which means you're logged in order to do this operation. So we're testing kind of role-based security here. Now we're saying you're a user, you should be able to get all the UCSB dates, but we're doing a little bit more of a test here. What we want to do is create a UCSB date, and here's where we use that builder notation, except remember that we don't want to create a date, we want to create a commit. So we're going to do commit1 equals commit.builder, and in this case, we're using capital C commit because builder is a static method of the class. It pertains to the class rather than a particular instance of the class. And what builder allows us to do is just specify the fields one at a time. So we're going to do URL and we'll just say HTTPS. Let's actually get the URL of a commit. Here's one, and we'll put that in there. We will do, let's see, what else do we have? Message, and the message, let's look at that specific commit and see what, so this one actually has a 2-line message in it. So we will put that in there. And oh, look at that. VS Code for the win. It automatically split it up for me and put it on 2 lines with a new line in it. So that's pretty cool. I am going to put that all in one line. Now let's see. Notice that this is all red at the moment. The reason is when you do this builder pattern, at the end, you need to do build and semicolon. Now it's happy, but I don't have all the fields in yet. I still need, let's see, author login. We'll do P. Conrad. And we also need commit time. And for that, we need a time object. So let's come up here and say zoned date time equals, and I'm hoping that there is a zoned date time dot parse similar to this local date time dot parse. And I can put in here 2022 01 03 T000000Z and hope that works. Of course, zone date time, we need an import, quick fix. No, in this case, the quick fix is not, none of these are right. I need to import, I think it's java.time.zoned date time. Now, let's see if that, zone date time, I need a variable. We'll see, I'll call that ZDT1. And that's going to be my commit time, ZDT1. All right, no longer need this local date time. A test typically has three parts: arrange, act, and assert. Right now, we're just setting up some objects. We're setting up a commit object instead of a date time object. In this particular test, we set up two of them, which is a good thing to do, but I'm going to be a little bit lazy right now and only set up one of them. And now we set up an array list of commits, and this will be our expected commits, and my expected commits to that array list. I'm going to add all, and then arrays.asList allows me, it's a little convenience method where I can make a list of things. But in this case, since I only have one, I can go a little bit simpler. Expected commits.add commit one. Yeah, that's easier. Now, here is where we get to this mocking business. The idea of a unit test is you want to test just one unit of code. Oh, array list commit. There we go. One unit of code. We do not want to test the database as part of testing this controller method. So that what I'm saying is we don't want to test whether the commit repository.findAll method works properly or not. That's a separate test. That's testing the database. We just want to know if this code works properly. So what we do is instead of interacting with a real database, which would be kind of tricky, we'd have to like set up a real database and put real data in it. What we do is we set up a mock database. And this UCSB date repository is actually, we're going to make it a commit repository. But this commit repository is not a real database. It's a mock bean. What a mock bean allows us to do is to say, use this special when method to say when this method, find all, is called on this object, you're going to return what I tell you to return. And what you're going to return is the expected commits. We've now set up an object, this commit repository, that behaves just like a real database, and it will behave perfectly. And we're not testing the database anymore. We're only going to test our controller method. All right. Still not quite sure why this mock MVC is the wavy line, but hopefully we'll figure that out eventually. What this is saying is we want to perform a get on this URL, and we expect we'll get back status OK, which is the 200 status, and then we're going to return the response we get. Then we're going to verify, not the UCSB date repository, but that commit repository. On this object, we want the findAll method to have been called exactly one time. And then we're going to take the expected commits, and we're going to convert those into JSON. Now, this mapper cannot be resolved. We need a mapper object, and maybe we eliminated that. So let's put in here object mapper, mapper, and we will put auto-wired on that. What that allows us to do, and let's see, we need to declare object mapper, and we need to declare auto-wired, or import rather, I should say. What this object mapper is, this is a object provided by a package called Jackson, 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 which converts between Java objects and JSON objects. What's happening here in our test on this line is we're going to take this expected commits, which is an array list of commits in Java, and it's going to convert it to a JSON object. We're then going to get the response string from this API commits all, and we're going to verify that these two match each other. Now, we have a whole bunch of other tests. Actually, we don't have a whole bunch of other tests. We have just one other test in the file so far. I'm going to comment it out for now because I want to see if the tests we've written so far work. And I'm also curious as to why this mock MVC is like it has the wavy line there. Let me check one thing right quick. I want to look over in UCSB dates, and I want to look for, you see, mock MVC is not wavy here. I just want to look and see where do we find that in this file? Where's the first occurrence? So we see it embedded inside some of these imports here. I am wondering if it's, no, I don't think it's either of these with the star on it. We'll see. We'll see if we can figure out why that is red. Let's see what happens if we run the tests. Now, we can do Maven test, and that will run all the tests, but it's much more efficient to do Maven test -d test equals, and then just do commits, excuse me, commits controller tests. It will run just that one file. And sure enough, this variable mock MVC, it's claiming that it cannot find the symbol. So I'm going to pause the video for a moment, see if I can figure out what is going on with that, because that is a little unexpected. Okay, I think I found it. If we look at the imports that we did at the top here, I think we will see that we did not put all of the imports in. Oh, no, I'm wrong. We have all the imports. That's not it. All right, so I'm still a little stumped. Web MVC test, we have these two lines. Let's compare these. Here's our dates controller test. Here's our commits controller test. What is different? Commits controller.class, test config. Have our mock MVC here. Still trying to figure out what did we mess up? All right, well, one thing I like to do when I have a problem like this is start by commenting out everything that is creating a problem. And so now we have just this, and let's try running it again. And I think in this case, the problem we have is that no tests were executed, but there are no failures. Let's see what happens if I add just one test. And again, the mock MVC is saying that it doesn't like it. Why would that be the case? Okay, found it. It's right here in line 45. You can see that public class UCSB dates controller test extends controller test case, and that is where the mock MVC comes from, I'll bet. Paste that in, and then go over here and look at controller test case. Do we have a controller test case? We do. And look at that, auto-wired public mock MVC, mock MVC. And also, this is where the object mapper would have come from. Remember, it didn't have an object mapper. So I no longer need to declare my own object mapper because I'm already inheriting one from, oops, I deleted that in the wrong spot. This is controller test case. In commits controller, now that I am extending API controller, sorry, that's the wrong again. Commits controller tests, there it is. Now that commits controller test, hold on, commits controller test, there it is. Now that it extends controller test case, I no longer need to, oh, come back, silly thing. I no longer need to declare my own object mapper because I inherit one. I inherit one from, oh, darn it, I'm still in the wrong window. Okay, this one, commits controller tests.java. This object mapper is no longer needed because we inherit it from controller test case. That object mapper is here. So is the mock MVC. The reason all these mock MVCs were saying that they were unknown is because I wasn't extending controller test case. So I'm going to try uncommenting all of these tests. These are the ones that we've actually updated. And let's see if they pass. They all pass. Good. So now let's look at this last one. So let's uncomment this last test case. And in this last one, an admin user can post a new, not UCSB date, but a new commit. Instead of a local date time, let's have a zoned date time. And instead of a UCSB date, oh, again, let's create a commit. So there's a commit. And then what we're saying here is when commit repository dot save, and when we pass exactly this object, that's what this EQ means. EQ, it's called an argument matcher. And when when what we save is equal to this, then this fake database, this commit repository mock bean database, is going to return exactly that commit. Now, this is going to be not quite matching reality because in reality, the commit that comes back would have an ID in it, an ID field, but it's good enough for our purposes. So we will basically say, when you save this, return this. We're going to perform the mock MVC. One thing to note is that this with CSRF, this will be in the example code, but whenever you do a post, there's something called the CRSF token that is related to web security. It prevents cross-site request forgeries. That's what the CSRF stands for. It's just important that the with CRSF is there whenever you're doing a post, delete, or a put. Not needed with gets, but it is needed with anything that changes state on the server. So we're going to post this. Now, we also need to look at this. These fields are not the right ones. We're going to need to change this so that our post parameters are the ones we expect. So it's going to be, for example, message equals, and that needs to match the message here. Now this message is kind of complicated and it's got a lot of characters in it that are complicated characters. So I'm going to make this a real simple commit message. PC updated my code. Now, the fact that this has spaces in it could also create a little bit of a problem for us. So PC updated is a terrible commit message, but it will be fine for testing this. And so we want to say message equals PC updated, ampersand, the next part of this URL is going to be URL equals, and then we've got this whole URL here. And because it's a URL, we already know that all the characters in it are URL safe. That's handy. And now we're going to put an ampersand here. The next thing is author login. So author login equals pconrad, and then an ampersand, and the commit time is going to be equal to, and there is the text version of the commit time. So we'll paste that in. All right. So that is the URL that we're going to post to. Then we're going to verify that the commit repository, that we did a save on that with, and really here it should say EQ, this commit one. So we're saying that we want a save to have been invoked with something equal to this exactly one time. Then we want to take that commit one and we want to convert it to JSON. And then we're going to make sure that the JSON that comes back matches the JSON that we got back when we tried out this controller method. So that's the test. Before we had 5 tests, let's run our tests again. And now we have 6 tests and they all pass. So we can do Maven test Jacoco report. And what we hope to get back is that all of our tests are covered. All of our code rather is covered by tests. So open target site Jacoco index 100%. So that's good. We could run PyTest, but rather than run PyTest here, since it takes a very long time, and pretty sure we're in good shape because we covered the tests and this is code that worked before, we're going to try just committing it and see what we get. So git status, we'll get add, get commit -m PC, test coverage for commits controller tests, Jacoco at 100%. And get push. And I should just be able to do get push because I did the -u before. And that should cause our pull request. And is this the one? Is this the pull request we did before? Click on summary. team01 staff. Let's look at our pull request. This is, oh, sorry, one more time. Create commit controller. You see it is running through again. We have the yellow here, so it's going to try running through all of these. While we are looking at that, let's take a look and see. I mentioned the Java doc before. And if I look under, for example, under controllers, you can see that I've got a UCSB dates controller. And this is a REST controller for UCSB dates. This text comes from, and all of this description and all the sort of more lengthy descriptions down here, these come from those Java doc comments. So if you're wondering what is the purpose of, and back over in commits controller, what's the purpose of comments like this one? It is to format the Java doc. And the Java doc is a nice, handy way when you've got a very large code base to see what are the methods, what are the fields, what do they do. It can be very useful. Let's go back now and take a look at our pull request. And it is chugging along. And looks like backend Jacoco is working. So we're still waiting on PyTest and also the integration tests, but looks like we're in pretty good shape here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video for a moment. As you know, before I pause the video, let's go back and take a look at our acceptance criteria and see if we have done everything. By the way, everything here in this is kind of walking you through what we've done in this video. Should pretty much match. So there's a controller file. Yep, we got that. We have get all, commit all. Now this capital C, we did lowercase c. It's fine as long as we're consistent. The Swagger endpoints are well documented. Yes, they are. The post endpoint works as expected. Yep, we tried that. The get endpoint works as expected. They were as expected when the app was deployed to Doku. That we did not try yet. So let's check and see, did our Doku go through? It looks like it did. So let's come over here, bring this up on Doku, log in, go to Swagger, go down to commits, and I'm just gonna, this is not the ideal way of doing this, but just show you. Now this one I have to type in a proper time or it won't take it. 2024 1031 T 235900Z. And the Z is for the time zone. Click execute and it works. And then if I go to get commits all and execute, it works. So I can come back over and say, yes, that works. There's full test coverage. We're going to find that out. Well, we saw that there's full test coverage. We don't know if there's full mutation coverage. We'll find out in just a moment. And so let's see. Looks like it worked. Looks like we got green. And so the show all checks, the fact that PyTest, where is it here? Incremental PyTest and backend PyTest are green. We can mark this as ready for review. And we can drag this on our Kanban board over to in review. And we are ready to drag this one to in progress. So that is going to end things for this video. In the next video, we will add the get endpoint for a single record. That one should go quite a bit faster since we already have our controller file in place and we already have our test in place. We're just going to add one method, add a few tests, and that should go very smoothly. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.